We start this story with a view of the mission from the roof of the monastery in the late 1960s. The mission was at that time in full swing of a building activity which started in 1965. In the country, the day begins early. Since the beginning of the boarding school in 1948, the mission had its own power. The power plant operating now is the fourth generation of power plants for the boarding school and soon will be replaced with a bigger unit. In the dormitory, activity begins. Cleaning up and making their beds. Some do a good job, others find it hard to get the hang of it. On the mission, there is a primary school and an agricultural school. The older children travel daily by bus to the high school at Morawa. The Pallottines began farming here in 1928. In 1948, the boarding school started on the farm, mainly at the requests of parents of children on the pastoral stations in the region. That request was already known in 1929, but the Pallottines were only interested in establishing a wheat and sheep farm to support the two missions we looked after in the Kimberley, Beagle Bay and Lombardina. In the 1950s and 60s, most of the children came from the stations, but today children come from all over the state. Sometimes during the week, two boys were chosen to be altar boys for the day. They went to the little chapel in the morning to get ready. The little chapel was built between 1947 and 48. Soon this chapel, one of the last wooden buildings, will be replaced with a new chapel which is being built at the moment. Today the boys from the agricultural school go to Mass on Sunday to the Christian Brothers Agricultural School, our neighbours, because not everyone fits into the little chapel here now. At the place where the old chapel is, a new shop and storeroom will be built. After this, a hall will be built, then the building program is at an end for the time being. Some of the older boarders work on the mission. The girls work in the kitchen and sewing room, and jobs like cleaning the floor in the children's dining room. They all help to keep the place going. Primary school girls and boys have their daily duties before going to school too. All get ready for school. The children being all over the place, it will take some time before everyone is in the classroom. While we look at the children dribbling into the classroom, a little about the history. Right from the start in 1948, the school was co-educational. This made it easier to run the school, especially in the 50s and 60s, because a lot of the children were related. News of life at Tarden would filter back to the parents on the stations. Also, over time, parents who were on the mission when they were children began sending their children to the boarding school. Inside the classroom, the children were hard at work. We also look at some of the drawings and paintings the children made. It's one of the more popular subjects for the children. Many of the subjects are related to station life, where most of the children come from. When the school started, it was a Catholic school first run by the Presentation nuns. Later, the Dominican nuns took over the teaching. After they left, the Schoenstatt sisters were involved in the school. And these sisters left in 1960, and the government took over the running of the school. On the farm, work goes on sometimes till sunset. Some of the boys of the agricultural school also work at the farm to gain practical experience that they can use in later life. They learn to drive tractors under the supervision of one of the brothers, or learn to handle sheep, pigs and chooks. In the morning, the boys do classwork. Brothers Eddie and Morris start harvesting wheat in the front paddock in November. In 1969, the first year of wheat quotas, this presented a problem all round the district, but at St Joseph's farm it was not so badly affected. During this harvest, Harry the wheat grader graded 500 bags of seed wheat for next season. Our oats had been harvested already in the Geraldton block. The Geraldton block is a piece of land that belongs to the Diocese of Geraldton and is on loan to us. Half of this block consists of natural draining systems that form part of the catchment area of the Irwin River. It has a number of salt lakes. We grow about 1,900 acres of wheat and 600 of oats on a rotation system of 3 years. The oats are mostly used for the 2,800 sheep on the farm. The farm boys are not involved in harvesting because they are too young and the machines are too complicated. Also, the school closes in early December, which is in the middle of harvest. This year we had about 381 millimetres of rainfall. It's a good year. There are plenty of volunteers here at the old bakery. Since the beginning of the hostel in 1948, the mission baked its own bread. It's heated by wood from the paddocks. Every Saturday the truck went out with the children to collect the wood for the bakery and for the boilers for the hot water. At the end of this year we'll have a new bakery operated by gas. This long tradition of having children involved will end. For the children it'll be a sad day because it was one of the most popular duties around and has always had eager volunteers to help out. After finishing, the children got a bun each for their effort. This sort of work was always carried out after school hours. Once a year the school takes part in the school sports carnival, and this time it's at Mingenew. This is also a long tradition of the school and goes back to its beginning. Children always look forward to the day when they can compete with others of their own age and find out just how good they are. Sometimes the parents of the children are there to see them and help them perform well. Over the years the school has done well. They practice for many weeks before the event like this and have their own championships among themselves as factions, well before they compete with the others. For all the people involved, it's a very big day every year. On Sundays, all the children go to a nice picnic spot in the country. In the springtime, carpeted ephemeral everlastings like these yellow pom-poms appear everywhere around Tarden. The pom-poms grow mainly in red soils. These flowers grow in yellow or white. Each cluster surrounded by yellow or white bracts, and all combined in a pom-pom-like head. Probably no other land can boast such a richness of wildflowers. Nature lovers from all over the world speak with enthusiasm and frequently with awe of the wonderful and extraordinary display of the everlastings in August and September. The daisies look very attractive when the plants grow together, but are only a short-lived annual. The flowering of the wildflowers here is dependent on the rainfall and is very poor in dry years. The grey butcherbird is common. It's easy to distinguish from the pied butcherbird because it's smaller and has more vivid black and white colouring. Pink everlastings are the most common of the everlastings and grow out in the open. Banded plovers are one of the first birds to start nesting. They will perform distraction displays, walking with a broken wing to lure intruders away from their offspring, like this one. There are many different species of acacia growing and flowering at different times. The common Port Lincoln parrot, not the 28 parrot. One of the many blue wildflowers that adorn the countryside. Galahs are the most common cockatoos. They're so common that the farmers here regard them as pests. In their own right, it's a beautiful bird. It's people that created the problem with these because people upset the natural balance for their own ends. Another cockatoo, the corella. Only a small flock of little corellas roam in the Tarden district. The corellas nest almost exclusively in hollows which occur naturally in trees. In this district, it's the York gum. The last of the cockatoos we see is the red-tailed black cockatoo. This spectacular bird is also common. It uses the old York gums as nesting sites. It sometimes takes well over 100 years for the trees to develop large enough hollows for these birds. Guinea flowers are the first to flower after the first rain in May. There are 3 different species in this area. Lay missionaries in the kitchen preparing the meals. They are people that volunteer 2 years of their lives to work here and help the less fortunate in life. Most of the volunteers come from the eastern states. This place could not run successfully with paid staff. It works only with people of total dedication, care, and the love to help other people more than chasing money and their own interests. In the children's dining room, the children are put together in family groups as much as possible. There are tables with the Simpsons, the Whitehursts, the Ellis family, the Ryans, the Mungas and the Egans. Most of these families have connections with the school going back to the beginning in 1948. On the tables, one of the staff members sit with them to teach the children table manners and stop any upsets. Family connections are always promoted and are an important part of the policy here. There is a roster in place for children and staff for the washing up and cleaning. The bigger boys from the agricultural school have their own dining room for practical reasons. They do their own chores like washing up and cleaning. During the day or sometimes in the evening, the older girls work in the sewing room. The girls learn how to mend clothes for the children. It's a skill that may come in handy when they start their own families later on. The boys that are working on the farm had their clothes mended by the girls. It was an important part of practical learning. The place was set up to teach practical skills more than academic ones. At the end of the school year, there is a break-up party. They sometimes go away, but this year it's in the children's dining room. The children are all dressed up for the show they put on. Also playing is the imitation band. All the children take part. The staff also take part in the show. Here Brother Wally Sharman puts on an act as a black-faced minstrel. It was one of the more popular acts of the evening among the children. In the daily life of the mission, Brother Wally works with the building team, helping replace the old wooden buildings with new brick ones. Racism has never been an issue. After the concert, the children get stuck into some nice things to eat, prepared as always by the lay missionary cooks. After a long and eventful day with many new experiences behind him, it's time to get ready for bed. The dormitory is a far cry from the old wooden buildings of the past. It was finished in the late 1960s. Father Gerard Christoph is now in charge of the primary school boys. Hopefully he will do this job for a long time. It will give stability to the boys, a requirement to be successful with children anywhere. It's a sad reflection of the time that stability is missing at some of the places the children call home. Like other children, some like to play or do some reading. They feel secure and happy in a place like this because of the dedicated people that look after them. Their dedication is to the children and not to their self-importance while working here at Tarden. In a few days, most of the children are going home on the mission bus. It's one of the most exciting times for the children. The station buildings may not be so modern like the mission ones, but it is home. They will spend the freedom of station life with their parents and relatives. They exchange experiences with other children and go bush. The station children do know a lot more about the bush than the townies. Most of the bush children have some knowledge and respect what nature has to offer. The townies have lost most of this. Most families are drifting away from the stations, and with this, the bush knowledge is also disappearing from the younger generation. It's a sad reflection of the time we live in. We end with this look at the Pallottine mission from the late 1960s until the early 1970s.